Maybe that's what happened to Bob Coulter as well. I don't have his text though.
I could send it to him. He
Yeah.
has to search for Quigley to get it.
Yes, that's what I was just saying, right? Because you probably looked for Kathleen's email like I did.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like from last month. I just sent it to him.
Here he comes.
Okay, we found him.
Mhm.
I bet she was in Reading.
Tried to hide. Okay, here we go. I think we have everybody. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Department Board to order. Let's see here. I have to read this. This meeting is being held remotely on Zoom and streamed live on
I love the
RCTV.
jacket, Bob.
I'm sorry?
I love the jacket with Bob's gun on.
John's too serious. John's too serious. I had to go find my St. Patrick's Day jacket, John. That's why I was a
You have to
minute
use it
late.
more than one day a year, right?
I didn't get to wear it yesterday, so I had to bust it out for today. Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
perfect. Perfect, Bob. So this meeting is being held remotely on Zoom and streamed live on RCTV and YouTube. It is recorded for distribution to the community television stations in Reading, North Reading, Wilmington, and Linfield. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda. We ask that all questions or comments from the public be directed to the chair and that all parties, including members of the RMLD board, act in a professional and courteous manner when addressing the board or responding to comments. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board should state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain order in all public comment or ensuing discussion. At this evening's meeting, we'll allocate a total of 10 minutes for public comment with a maximum allotment of 2 minutes per speaker. Speakers will join the Zoom meeting at the appropriate time from the waiting room. We will let you in to speak, subject to the direction of the chair. After you speak, we will have you leave the Zoom meeting while the next speaker is allowed to join. You will be able to watch the meeting live on RCTV and YouTube. Please state your name and address prior to speaking. Phil Pacino will be the board secretary.
Yep.
And now per the directive of the state, I need to ask all remote participants to identify himself, herself. John Stempeck.
Phil Pacino.
Dave, you need to unmute.
Yep. Dave Hennessy.
Dave Talbot.
Bob Coulter.
Great, thank you. We're moving into public comment. The Citizens Advisory Board, Jason, welcome.
Welcome. I have no comments at this time.
Okay, good. And I was the representative to the CAB, and we'll see many of the presentations that were made by the staff this evening as well. Very excellent presentations. See, do we have any liaisons? We don't have anyone here this evening from the Board of Select Board. So I'd like to move to public comment. I believe we had an individual who wanted to comment. Is he in the waiting room?
Yes, he is. go ahead and admit him. Bob
Sure.
Connor.
Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob, are you there? Mr. Connor?
Hello, can you hear
Yes,
me?
hello, Mr. Connor?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, hi, hi. You're here with us in front of the board if you'd like to speak.
Yes, my comment is, and I have a question. In prior meetings, the public could ask questions during the meeting and
Hello,
participate.
Bob, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Mr. Connor?
Hello, yeah, I'm here.
Yes. Can you hear? Hello, Mr. Connor?
Yeah, hello, hello.
He must be on, it must be the YouTube as well. He might have two things going on at the same time. Bob,
Oh, how's that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I did, sorry. So anyway, in prior meetings, the public could ask questions during the meeting and participate on a real-time basis, which we appreciated. It made us feel like our voices were being heard and as the decisions were being made. But the new policy that I've read changes this dramatically. So three questions. The first one is, will this end after COVID is over and the meetings are hopefully alive? The second question is this because the select board does it this way and the other town and government groups does it? And the last question is, I believe the last meeting, no questions were allowed, which seems to be in contradiction with policy 19. So I was wondering why no questions were allowed. So that's it.
Sure, Bob. Let me answer those questions for you. In the last meeting, I moved the public comment to the end of our meeting because we started late. We were a half hour late and we had multiple hours worth of material to go through. It was one of the most intense meetings we've had in a long time. So I moved you can go back and look at the video, and I moved the public comment to the end of the meeting at that time. So people were welcome to comment at then. I did change it to the select board type of function because I felt that the select board had a very effective process where people are allowed to speak, but again, they're only allowed to speak at the beginning of the meeting. And again, I think it's for the purposes of efficiency and being able to get through all the different things that are on the items and to allow people to express opinions at the beginning of the meeting. And so we've adopted that same strategy. When we end COVID and we're back into live sessions, everyone is welcome to attend live, but even at those meetings, the time to speak or the being able to be allowed to speak is up to whoever the chairman is at that time. And again, it's mostly for the purposes of just efficiently conducting a meeting. Because if you looked at the number of people we had at some of our previous meetings, there were 15 to 30 people involved. And that would stretch us, if everyone spoke, that would stretch us way past our, what is it, 10:30 finish time for these meetings. And so we're trying to really just be as efficient as possible while still allowing the public to speak on whatever issue they'd like to speak on. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I understand when you have a lot of people. I guess for some reason, I thought maybe it wasn't the last meeting, but for some reason I thought no questions, no comment was allowed at all. So, but I can't pinpoint the date. So I'll let it pass, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, we do leave it open for public comment, and but thank you. We'll try to, again, we're just trying different formats here to be as efficient as possible.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Aye.
I'd like to move on to item number 3, approval of the board minutes. If I could have a motion, please.
Yeah, you ready? Move that the Board of Commissioners approve the meeting minutes of November 19th, 2020, December 3rd, 2020, and December 16th, 2020, on the recommendation of the general manager.
Second.
Any discussion, or are we just moving to a roll call vote? Mr. Stembeck, aye?
Hennessy, aye.
Ms. Pacino, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Sculter,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a personal privilege to talk about the minutes for a minute.
Yes, please go, Mr. Pacino.
Okay, so I, reviewed the minutes here for these 3 months. Mary Ellen O'Neill, former commissioner, former chair of this committee, reminded us that we're behind in the minutes. We need to catch up with the minutes. I didn't want to throw Tracy under the bus the last time, but I'm about to now. I've been asking Tracy to get those minutes to me, and they've not been coming. It's no reason why we can't have the minutes within 60 to 90 days up on the website. I also think that maybe we should put a link on the website to the RCTV broadcast, so people can actually get right on there, right to that link. Maybe it's there already. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to do much besides my taxes today. But and one of the other things, I got a personal request. When we do sentences, please skip 2 spaces between each sentence as opposed to 1. Makes it a lot easier for me to read.
Mr. Pacino, I think those are all great suggestions, and you're absolutely right. We've struggled for a long time trying to get the minutes done on time, and we've had issues with that. I think we've also moved to a different software, correct me if I'm wrong, to do some of the translation more effectively. Is that correct, Eileen?
I think we're up to date now with the minutes because open meeting, we're 3 months. So it's 3 months. So this is March. So you reviewed, so we're up to date now. And we will stay up to date. And Janet has gotten us a transcription company that we can take the tapes from RCTV, get them transcribed, and then we still have to scrub them here, but we're hoping that it'll go a little bit faster. But we are up to date at this point.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'd like to move on to the general manager's report.
Okay, thank you. The community update will go first. The Heat Pump 101 customer webinar, we did hold that on March 2nd. It was very well attended with 125 live participants and 250 views of the webinar recording. It's also being aired on 4 of the community TV stations. You should check that out. The high school art contest submission period ended on the 15th. We had 21 students submitted the artwork. I think I sent everybody here, all of the CAB and board members, all of the art. It was quite inspiring. Our theme this year is resiliency. This will be the 5th year that we've used high school art students for our cover to reflect our themes, and our themes have been built on over the years, and we continue. The virtual, Joyce came up with a great format for voting, and you'll be getting that tomorrow. And so you can select 5 and send them back, and then we can pick a cover. And we usually, reward all the students that send in submissions, and then we, last year, I think we picked different theme topics to make more winners. So we'll probably do something similar this year. The virtual EV workshop now that we're kind of going through all of our queued up backlog here. We're going to have that on April 27th at 7 p.m. And we can talk a little bit more as we come up with the format of that workshop and send it out to everyone. The RMLD is applying for the Mass state grants that are out there for the EV charging stations at multiple locations. While the level 3s are due tomorrow, I just remind everybody that while the level 2s are not due tomorrow, the money is going to run out very quickly. We have a number of sites from Reading, and we appreciate that the Board of Selectmen gave us authorization, as well as Greg and I attended the Board of Library Trustees and we got their permission. As well, Wilmington has 2 sites that they have submitted. So all that is getting done tomorrow. IRD has been working around the clock to make sure that those submissions are in. So fingers crossed that we get them. There's not a lot of them, but we're hopeful that we'll be a winner of some. We're also working on the 2020 annual report. That's why we're picking that cover from the high school. Joyce will be reaching out to you about photo updates. Bob Coulter for an update on photo if anybody else wants new ones. And I'll let Wendy discuss what the audit schedule is going to be as part of her presentation. But because we've made a full transition now to a calendar year, we're not doing the Reading April town meeting presentation. We'll probably have the annual report out in June. And so I'll be doing a fall presentation, and then I go around to all the Board of Selectmen. So I have asked the CAB in the last meeting to get me those appointments. And we not only will go over the 2020, but we'll also give highlights all the way up to the present day of whenever I give that presentation. So stay tuned for that, but that's coming up. All right. Thank you so much.
If you haven't taken a look at the artwork, please do. It's just fabulous. So the students have done an incredible job, and there's just such talent in every one of them. It's just wonderful. Okay, I'd like to move on to the review of policies. As you know, this is a sort of a recurring theme where we review the policies on an ongoing basis to try and keep up with the times. And perhaps we can just walk through each one of them, and then we'll have to do a roll call vote for each policy to approve it. So, Mr. Pacino, could you please read the first one?
Okay, hang on. Okay. Move the policy number four, smoking, be scheduled for the next periodic review without change.
Have a second, please.
Second.
Any discussion?
What does this mean? What is the meaning of the motion? We moving it forward in another meeting, or what are we doing?
It's to approve the policy as it's been changed. You should have received all of these different policies prior to the meeting in terms of what they look like.
Oh, do I have a hand up? I can answer that, Chair.
Yeah, Colleen, please.
Yeah, so I sent everyone the table of all the policies, and over time we've been going through them. And what we had decided a while ago is that because a lot of these policies were written like in the 1990s, that we would put on a 3-year review time period. So this policy 4, there's no recommendations for change. So we're really just saying no change, it stays as is. And we're looking for the next review date in March of 24. Now, if any of the laws change with respect to, this covers e-cigarettes, vaping, and things like that. If any of the laws change, then certainly this will be brought forward to the commission again. But I'm not recommending any changes to policy 4. It's just a new revision date for 3 years.
Okay.
Yes, Bob, please.
You're on mute.
Mute. Yeah.
When you hire new employees, is there a restriction on smoking?
Yes, we have in everyone's career development plan, they have to be familiar with all of the board policies, and they are restricted to, you can't smoke in the vehicles. It's as it's stated in the policy. Am I answering your question?
No, I just new employees, when you hired, you like when police and fire, that non-smoking is the standard now.
Yes,
So,
we have non-stop or on the grounds either.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if I could call for a roll call vote on policy number 4, please. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Hennessy, aye.
Pacino, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Mr. Coulter,
Thank you. Policy number 7, paid sick leave.
Move that policy number 7, paid sick leave, be scheduled for the next periodic review without change.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Could I have a discussion? And Colleen, would you provide any comments on this?
Yeah, there's no change request on this. It was scrubbed again for any legal changes. I'm requesting a March 2024 date for the next review. And I will keep that schedule that I gave you, as I update that, I'll send you the updates so that you know what's next up on the queue.
Okay, could we have a roll call vote, please? Mr. Stempak, aye.
Pacino,
Hennessy,
aye.
aye.
Talbot, aye.
Dwyer.
Thank you. Policy 8, other post-employment benefits, OPEB liability trust fund.
Okay, move that the Board of Commissioners approve policy 8, other post-employment benefits, OPEB, liability trust fund as presented on the recommendation of the general manager.
Second.
Discussion?
John, quick question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Is this gonna be overseen by the town trustee? As part, I just didn't, I know we moved the pension benefits, they're gonna oversee it. Is this a component of it or is it independent?
Independent.
It's independent, okay. Why didn't this shift over with the other pension and benefits?
Wendy, do you want to speak to that?
Hi, Bob, actually, this is the new trust that was just signed by the Board of Commissioners, is the OPEB specifically.
Oh, I didn't know if it was independent. Yes, I didn't know if this was a separate portion that came in that was just a smaller offshoot. That was the question.
Oh,
So,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
So it's the same other post-employment benefits. It's just some legal language got changed in the policy to reflect proper chairpersons and to say that the trust is now with the town. The custodian is the treasurer. Just the
Is
legal-
that up? Okay, I don't have that one. I was looking at the old printed one, so, okay. Yep.
Yeah, as I
Chair-
recall with that one, there were some issues in terms of sign.
Oh, we lost you, John.
I think he's muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, good, thank you. I said that I thought there had been some issues in the wording that we had resolved with the
Yeah.
town treasurer.
Yes, that we went back and forth with the town. For this particular policy, the main changes is the declaration of trust that you, except for Bob, because he wasn't on the board at that time, back in September 19th of 2019, it got signed. It's been signed. It's gone back through the town. You guys all signed it again, and we sent it up, and they will be submitting into PRIT, which is why we had to recertify for the OPEB. So before we take a vote on this, I wanted to add that date of September 19th, 2019 in the first paragraph. That would be the only additional change to this.
Okay, so did we add that change, or Kathleen, can you add that change into the motion, please?
Yeah, I'll move to add the date as recommended.
Could I have a second, please?
Matter of fact, I'll
Thank
even
you.
accept it as the main motion, if that's okay, unless there's any objection. I can accept it as part of the main motion.
What,
if
yes,
there's
great,
objection. Yeah,
okay. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Ms.
Yes,
Pacino,
yeah.
aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Can I say who seconded that?
Me. Dave.
Mr. Hennessy?
Dave Hennessy.
Oh, yeah,
Thank
there's
you.
2 days. I forgot.
Let's see, policy 12,
Policy,
go ahead, just
Okay.
go ahead, Phil.
Move that policy 12, Reading Municipal Light Board documents dissemination be scheduled for the next periodic review without change.
Second.
Discussion? If no discussion, roll call vote. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Hennessy,
Pacino,
aye.
aye.
Dwyer.
there's no recommended changes in policy 12. So this is just a 3/24 next review date.
Mr. Talbot?
Sorry, what's the question?
Oh, we were taking a roll call vote.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I said aye already.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You know.
Policy 19, Board of Commissioners.
Move that the Board of Commissioners approve policy 19, Board of Commissioners have presented on the recommendation of General Manager.
Second.
Discussion?
So there's no change, just a quick question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Is there any change to this policy?
No, no recommended change.
Okay, so I guess the only thing, whether tonight or at a future date to clarify is, we did have some discussions in recent meetings that it does say we approve power supply contracts. I know there was some discussion that maybe that's not always the case. Feels like that needs clarification because it's pretty clear in black and white that it says we do approve large power supply contracts, and it would be logical for that would be something we would do for very, very large, contractual decisions. So is that anything that needs clarification?
I think it's in there.
I mean, it is correct.
Oh, yes, you're right. Power contracts and agreements and their resource mix. Yes, after the 30-day period.
After the cab looks at it. So then, I mean, not to go back over this whole thing, but this was one of the issues was why didn't this happen with the biomass thing? And then there was some discussion. Well, there's another mechanism by which the GM can do this notwithstanding that sentence you just read. So that seems like that needs to be clarified. Like, I presume, and I think we've kind of come to a consensus that it's clear that we do want to know about and approve or otherwise, something of the magnitude of 90 or $150 million and not know about it. So I'm just wondering if there's anything to be clarified in that policy.
Well, the policy as stated doesn't differentiate between 10% or 30% or 40%. I certainly don't have any issue if we wanted to put in below a certain level, the general manager, has the freedom to do the right thing in terms of capturing these kinds of elements, because there's always a question of time in some of these in terms of being able to get on board with them.
Correct. And I know that we've approved and that if there is timely and it's sort of best practice that you don't want to wait weeks to have a meeting for something that's the transient opportunity, but when it's a long-term 20-year contract for a plant that's not built for 3 more years, it doesn't fit in that category. So anyway,
I think it's stated, Dave, that we'll just have to do it moving forward. I mean, it's in black and white. We could bold it. I think we could.
Okay. I'm only asking because you had made the point that it didn't apply in that case a few months ago. So that's all. We don't have to go over it again tonight. Nothing changed in this policy, so we don't have to go over it. I guess the clarification is, what was this other mechanism that supposedly allowed a unilateral decision without board input? What was that mechanism, and is that something else that we need to change or revisit in some other policy? Because that was always confusing to me. What other mechanism was that superseded this?
Sure, Mr. Coulter.
To furthering Dave's point, it does say 30-day period. I think we need to adjust that because 30 days, you can't make any type of financial decision with the 30-day period in there. But for a long-term contract, that's one thing, but I think after allowing maybe the language needs to be modified a little bit there. But I think in policy 30, I think Colleen was introducing that she was going to bring forward all contracts now in front of the board. But again, to Dave's point, we were talking about, is there a certain percentage or dollar value that we shouldn't even engage with? So I thought, Colleen, you were going to try to, and Greg and Chuck, you were going to try to work on a figure that would be something that we, above a line and below the line that you would engage us in. So
Actually, what I said was that I would take them all, every one of them, except for TFA, because I have a vote already for layering and laddering small transactions through the TFA. So we'll just bring everything through.
I think that's the wise choice. We'll just bring everything
the safest
through
way. Yeah.
and take a look at it, just as it states in the policy, and try to live up to the policy. I think that's appropriate.
if we find it doesn't work, then
I'm sorry.
If it doesn't work, we modify it again, right? So.
I
Well,
mean,
that's
it might mean for longer board meetings for future commissioners, and I'm not really worried about that. So I think You should have
Mr.
a
Lame
robust
Duck.
discussion.
There you go.
Amy,
Well-
you're not going to watch us on TV?
That said, could I have a roll call vote, please? Mr. Stepek, aye.
It's
That's the
Pacino,
aye.
aye.
Albert,
Sculter.
Okay, excellent. Power supply update. Chuck, please.
Oop.
I'm sorry, did we finish all of the,
I thought we did.
Yeah, there was just the 5 of them calling.
Right, 5 of them, right. That's correct.
Yep, okay.
I mean, if there were others, you can.
No,
do the
there
next
wasn't.
meeting.
I miscounted.
Okay. Mr. Underhill?
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
You see that?
Yes.
Mhm. Oh, there we go. The first slide up tonight is a revisit of 2020. I have the 2019 actuals, the 2020 actuals, and what we use for a load forecast for our power supply budget for 2020. And I just wanted to revisit quickly that in 2020, we finished about 0.5%, 0.6% above 2019's results. We were about 3% below the forecast for 2020 that ENE prepared. And if you look at the first 4 or 5 months of the year, you'll see that that's where a lot of the load difference occurs. We were thinking about a year ago that we expect up to an 8% reduction in our retail sales as a result of the impact of COVID and the isolation protocols that have been put in place. In fact, we did not see that. The differences are primarily due to weather-related effects. Our industrial customers kept their production going. Residential loads were up a little bit. Some of the commercial traffic was down a little bit, but through it all, we remained fairly stable. So I just wanted to sort of bring that back around as a quick review. Next slide, please. So we're starting the year off, and for the first month of the year, we actually came in below our budgeted amount. Part of that is that sales were down, our load was down in January due to slightly warmer temperatures. This is even though we used the load forecast, the loads from 2020, 2019, 2020 to forecast our peak or our monthly load factors. So loads were still down a little bit. Costs were still down rather dramatically. We were seeing regular on-peak costs of about $20 to $25 a megawatt hour for the first couple of weeks in January. So energy costs were dramatically down, and you can see that that's where a big piece of the savings component occurred. Next slide, please. Capacity costs came in pretty much as budgeted. Slight difference, we can go back and look, they were slightly above what was projected. But on the other side of that, next slide, please. Transmission costs were down by almost an offsetting amount. So capacity and transmission are rolled into the same price grouping. on the customer bill, and that charge, or the cost impact on that was essentially flat for the month of January. Next slide, please. So this is basically showing what our portfolio looked like for the month of January, and it is pretty much what was expected. You can see that the top of the yellow bar is slightly below the forecasted kilowatt hour sales, which are the black line. So slightly down in loads, slightly down in energy prices. That's where the January difference occurred. And you can see what we had in our resource portfolio for the month of January. And I think that's it. Do I have one more, Kathleen?
Nope, that's it.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Chad.
Any questions?
No.
No questions? Okay. Let's move on to greenhouse gas emissions, standard policy 30 update.
Hey, good evening. Kathleen, I'll let you drive. We'll go right to the agenda slide. So as she brings that up, we're going to talk about two main categories. One is just a kind of an update in terms of policy 30 that you guys approved last month, some details behind what's happened since then and what we're doing going forward. And then the second big bucket is the hydro opportunity that we want to review with you as well. Go ahead, next slide. So legislative update and the certificate management are the two topics in the first category, policy 30 update. And then we'll shift gears to talk about the power portfolio, that hydro project in a few moments. Go ahead, next slide, please. So quick legislative update. You guys might have heard this already, but on Monday of this week, March 15th, the Roadmap 2050 or the Climate Bill S9, the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Standard Bill, that was basically approved by the Senate and relatively unchanged from the past several months. So remember that legislation has three main components, one being energy, two being housing, the third one being transportation. And most of the discussion back and forth of the various cycles over the past couple of months excuse me, has been relative to the housing. The energy's remained unchanged. This afternoon, March 18th, this afternoon, the House also approved it. The vote was 145 to 13, so pretty overwhelming. And as it's noted here, right, the next step is for it to go back to the governor. If the governor happens to reject it, it probably still will go through. The Senate and House both will probably override. So either way, while that slide comes back, either way, this legislation that we've been basically anticipating and preparing for, this climate legislation bill, will become law soon. So next mid-April, end of April timeframe. That's perfect, this slide. So the implication, yep, it's okay. Go back one, you're fine, Kathleen. Back one more.
Back, okay, sorry.
That's okay, it's good. Other way. So the next topic, so moving from the back to there, perfect. So in terms of certificate management, remember under the original policy 30, the Rev 1, which was in effect until last month, the majority of the certificates were sold. There was a collection of effects that have been continuously retired. In the slide in just a moment, don't change yet, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sequence in terms of some of the details that we need to manage around a little more carefully going forward. But under the new policy 30, the Rev 1 policy 30, some of the things included in that were a more attentive detail and diligence relative to managing the certificates, because now we need to do compliance both from a regulatory perspective as well as our internal policy 30. So in effect, starting in the second quarter, starting in April next month, we are going to be transitioning to be retiring certificates up to that annualized line. And that we'll start doing regular updates on this, but just to give you an idea of where we're going and what we're doing is we're going to be retiring certificates up to that gold line, which we used to call the Roadmap 2050 line on the annualized basis. Remember that last month we basically decided to put language in our policy 30 Rev 1 to have us do our best due diligence to strive to meet an annualized line. So that's what we're going to do going forward. In that mode of operation, since we're going to be retiring a larger and larger portfolio portion of our portfolio each month, each quarter, I'll get to the timing in just a second, we're going to retire the least valuable ones first. So for example, EFEX and main class 1 RECs will be the ones we retire first. Those that are above the certificates, after we've done those required retirements, the rest of them we will plan on selling. And part of that, again, is just to buffer the financial impact going forward. I'll talk a little bit more about the schedule here in just a second in terms of why we are trying to avoid expiration. At the end of the day, you'll see in just a moment that there's a shelf lifetime tied to these. And historically, it wasn't a big issue because we were selling what we could and retiring the rest. And now we're going to do it in a little bit more disciplined fashion. What we are going to do internally is monitor and manage these certificates on a monthly basis. We're going to report them out quarterly to you. There will be monthly updates, but the bigger changes you'll see in a moment will happen each quarter. And then, of course, from a compliance perspective, we'll start doing our annual filing. So we're thinking about it in terms of monthly management, quarterly reporting, and annual filings. Next slide, please. So just so you understand some of the context here, I'll just move through this kind of quickly. But these certificates, and whether they're EFEX or Mass Class 1 or anything in between, basically the way they're configured is that one certificate is issued or created. One certificate is created for each megawatt of energy produced by a generator. It's the important thing to note that while they are generated or created at the time that the energy is generated, they can't be transacted. They're not minted. They're not minted until approximately 6 months later. So if you look at those two bars, horizontal bars across the top, the green bar is basically what gets generated each quarter. So first, again, on a calendar year. So first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, you can see that. But they're not minted. That's the blue bar going across underneath. They're not minted until roughly 6 months later. And more importantly, we can't transact them. And when I say transact them, the two main things that we can do with them is either retire them or sell them. And so for what's created in the first quarter of each year, we have the window basically between July, there's 2 months between July and September when we can transact those. And the same thing for the second quarter, October, December, and et cetera. So there's a lag. We can choose to what we'll call bank or not transact certificates between these 4 blocks of windows to transact between those blue bars across the bottom. But the important thing to realize, there is a shelf life, as I mentioned earlier. And so if we have not transacted them by June 15th of the following year, they will be forfeited. So it is important for us to make sure that we manage them on a consistent basis and either retire as requirement or sell as requirement. Those are just some key pieces. So just kind of thinking about how we're going to manage this, what we envision producing on a quarterly basis for you is a chart that basically it'll be probably the 4th chart behind the power supply chart that Chuck just went through. There'll be one called certificates. And what we'll probably create for you is the various certificates on the left-hand column. And then across the top, we'll have opening balance, retirements, sales, closing balance. And so we'll do that on a quarterly basis. Our policy 30 that we approved indicates that we need to keep you guys updated on a monthly basis, and we will do, but just realize the major changes will happen on a quarterly basis tied to those blue bars across the bottom. So big picture, the takeaways for you guys to be thinking about, we are going to be actively managing our horizon, but we're going to be managing this stuff monthly. And we'll be taking into account the value of the certificates, any balancing compliance issues that we have to do, and also looking at the shelf lives. Our goal from that previous slide, I don't have to go back to it, but we're going to retire up to the compliance requirement line tied to our policy 30, and then we're going to sell the rest. And we're going to retire the least valuable ones first and work up the value chain. So that's kind of a quick summary of what we're going to be doing for certificate management going forward under the new policy 30. Questions? All right, we're gonna.
Sorry, Greg. Sorry, John. Quick question. somewhat related to policy 30.
Yes, sir.
When we have a solar customer, right, are we approaching the solar customers in Reading to buy their certificates? It might be small, or is it that small of a production? Are we not interested? But if we look at the totality of it, it might be an opportunity.
It's relatively small right now. And those certificates tend not to pass through our portfolio at this point in time, because they're actually not owned by us. So for the short-term time, we're not including those in any sort of compliance management. And then there are other ones that we look at relative to some of our community solar, where we have opportunities to actually participate or take an ownership role in those recs. But right now, it's mainly the other resources.
Yeah, if I could add a little bit to that. Under the program that we are participating with DOER for incentives to small scale programs, part of that requires that the RECs be turned over to the participating municipal light plant and that they be retired. So for any projects that we have done under the DOER aegis, we have been acquiring the RECs and we have been retiring the RECs. And going forward, once the DOER expires, our program will be changed so that if we pay an incentive to a customer for a solar installation behind the meter, they will turn over the RECs to us and we will retire them.
Oh,
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm assuming that will, if there's battery, same program with the battery program, or.
Yeah, the batteries don't have certificates right now, Bob, but they will impact the way the solar plays out. Correct.
Okay.
Just a quick follow-up, because I have a 4.65 kilowatt system now on my roof. So that means, I'm glad to hear that RMLD gets the RECs, that little tiny bit of a REC, and retired it from my roof. Because you're giving me.
If you're under the DOER,
yes.
If you took a DOER incentive, yes, the RECs come to us and we retire them. That's part of the DOER program.
That's good.
Yep.
And also, it's a quick technical question. Is somebody texted me saying the YouTube is garbled on me, so I don't know what that is. If there's any technical issue on that end.
On just you, Dave?
I guess so. Yeah. Somebody just texted me saying that I'm garbled or doubled or something. I don't know if
Double, maybe.
Well, I don't know. It's a very rainy, stormy night out. Hard to believe that would impact it, but.
I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna shift gears and move to
Yes,
the.
please do, Greg.
Yep. So, Kathleen, next slide if we could. So this is the context. Again, it's a little bit related, obviously, to policy 30, because what we're trying to do on an ongoing basis, as we talk on a regular basis, is keep filling that open part of the portfolio. Remember the upper right-hand corner of our charts that go out? We have open positions, and we continue to need to fill those in as contracts expire, et cetera. So we've been having some discussions with a company called Gravity Renewables. Just so you know a little bit about Gravity, we have 3 existing projects with them, a little smaller scale than this one we have right here. Gravity is, they focus only on hydro projects. They've got 17 projects that they either own and or manage, and plus another dozen projects. These are primarily east of the Mississippi, but they all do hydro projects. So they are hydro focused, and they're very experienced in this space. So and we've got experience with them. So we work very well with them. They have an opportunity for us. And the reason why we are kind of transitioning from an update to asking for a motion on tonight's discussion is in the context of the legislation that's passing. There's a lot more interest by all of the energy retailers to look at renewable and non-carbon projects going forward. So there's increasing pressure for us to act and move. On a related note, this, I'll give you through some background, but this project will, they'll be able to start delivering power from this project in the summer of 2021, which is only a couple months away. So a little bit of context why we're transitioning earlier today from an update to we'd like a decision on it. So I want to be able to answer the questions you guys might have. This particular project, the output of it, it's an existing dam that was actually started back in 1870 as a mechanical dam. In the early 19th century, it transitioned to electric generation. So there's a lot of history behind this particular project. There's a lot of history in terms of what the flows are associated with this one. It's not a pumped hydro. It's a river-based system in Connecticut. It went through major relicensing back in the early 1980s. And as you guys probably know, hydro projects undergo extensive regulatory scrutiny from environmental related issues, all sorts of issues. So they're pretty extensively reviewed as part of being relicensed. So the last relicensing was done in the early 1980s. This particular project has been family owned for many, many, many decades, and Gravity Renewables is in the process of acquiring this asset as well, and is in the process of refurbishing to bring it up to more reliable standards. It is about 3.8% of our load, should we actually contract with them, which we are recommending that we do. It's about 25,000 megawatt hours per year. This particular term, again, because of the nature of this being a non-carbon renewable, we like the idea of bringing this in on a longer term contract, in this case, 25 years, which fits very nicely into hydro projects that we have already. This particular case continues just like almost all of the other projects all the projects that we currently have. We like the concept of associated RECs. There's a lot of benefits for doing that. One is just administrative efficiency. In this particular case, remember I mentioned that this is undergoing FERC relicensing, and that relicensing is expected to be done by 2026. At that point in time, the anticipation and the way we are structuring the contract, that those would be Connecticut Class 1 certificates. Because there's some uncertainty as you get further out, so between years 15 and 25 years into the project, we've basically provided an option for those certificates at a fixed price. So if the market somehow softens, which is highly unlikely, we're not committing ourselves that far out to the certificates, but if they maintain the value which we expect them to do, then we have a fixed price tied to those. So again, we're trying to think carefully and think down the road with these long-term contracts in terms of how the RECs are managed. Between now, so starting in 2021 and 2026, these will be basically the equivalent of main Class 1 certificates. So they'll still, even in the early days, be able to be part of our compliance portfolio. And that is related also to the pricing. And so on the pricing, just to kind of put order of magnitude, at this volume, this particular contract, while it's 25 years out, it's a very, the rate is actually defined in the contract. It is less than, it's noticeably less than $2 million a year, just to give you guys an idea of order of magnitude. So it's not big, about 3.8% of our portfolio. It is renewable and then non-carbon, and it's an existing asset that's in the middle of basically relicensing, et cetera. So as we look at it, it fits our portfolio. It fits our policy 30 requirements. It's with a company that we trust and have a good track record with. So from both a financial perspective, a compliance perspective, an environmental perspective, and a risk management perspective, our recommendation is that we actually move forward with the contract for these guys. So anyways, that's kind of a big picture overview. I've covered a lot in a very short period of time. Questions?
I might just mention that the CAB in the previous session approved this as well. So in terms of cycling back through the CAB, I think the second thing is that as far as anyone knows, there's no community pushback on anything environmental, et cetera. As a matter of fact, they're supposedly putting in a fish ladder, I think they call it.
Yep, that's correct. Yes. That's the only environmental related update from what's already there. And again, the fact that this place has been there for a long time speaks to the stability of all the environmental factors.
Can you say which river it is, Greg?
So it's still, they're trying to close off, so they asked us not to,
okay.
not to reveal exactly.
I figured that's why you didn't mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that picture in the upper left-hand corner is not the actual facility. It's just, it's representative. And the reason I wanted to have a picture, when we think of small scale hydro, we're not talking about Hoover Dam, we're not talking about Bonneville Dam. This is smaller scale, but right. In reality, this is a nice sized small hydro system. So it's okay. What we're trying to do is kind of bring our average contract size up a little bit so that from a management perspective, we're very efficient and we're not managing a whole bunch of micro pieces. So that's another piece why this is a good size for us.
Greg, I think you also mentioned that from a flow perspective, there are dams ahead of this
Yep.
to sort of try to maintain a constant flow.
It's a little more steady. Yes, that's correct, John. Right.
Yeah, and John, that brings up another point. The upstream dams do have an impact on how the volume of flow times through the turbines of the downstream. And usually there is a negotiation with an upstream provider to see if they can balance their timing a little bit so that all of the units on that particular river are optimized to the extent possible in terms of offsets to energy price and meeting load obligation. So that's been factored in. We have about 5 years worth, I think, of historic hourly load data that we've been able to take a look at so that we can match and marry those impacts of their production against our load profile.
Thank you.
Yep, John, one question. Are there any river bladders involved with this or retention wells?
We are not aware of any. This is run of the river.
Okay.
Bladder project that I'm aware of is up in the village of Swanton.
So what we're, again, from the email traffic earlier, what we're asking the commission to do tonight is to make an actual motion to allow us to continue to move forward with this project. So that's why that email came out earlier this evening.
Phil, do you have the motion in front of you?
Did Phil drop off?
Yeah, Mr.
There we
Piquet? Phil?
Muted.
I don't see him.
He's there, he's muted.
Oh, there he is. Yeah. Did you receive the email, Phil? You're on mute, Phil. Phil, you're on mute. You're on mute. Mute.
Very good.
Mute. Yeah.
Like I said, I got my first COVID shot today, so I'm a little bit woozy.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Move that the Board of Commissioners vote to accept the general manager's recommendation to execute a contract with Gravity Renewables for energy, including associated certificates from a hydro facility in Connecticut.
Second. Oh, is that it?
Do you have any discussion?
Just one question. It's,
Go ahead. Yes.
is it a fixed price, or how does the pricing change over the life of the contract? And is whatever that is typical for a hydro project?
Yeah, so Commissioner Talbot, yeah, that's a good question. So the actual rate is fixed. It changes over time. So it's very predictable. In terms of the number, it is just on the lower end of our average of our hydro projects. And then just for reference, right, relative to the total portfolio, our hydro projects tend to be about 80% higher than the total portfolio. And that's basically to reflect the value of being non-carbon and renewable. And again, part of the reason why I want to move forward on this particular one, there are not a lot of these projects available, and there's a lot more interest that's come up over the past month or so. So we're trying to move quickly, and also that they're ready to start producing as well.
And there's no, like, anything we don't know about, like a controversy over this?
This, yeah, excellent question. In this particular one, not a lot of controversy, only because the asset has been in place for literally decades.
Yeah.
The history there, it's not, yeah, it's different than no controversy that we know of.
Yep. Well, thank you for moving quickly on it.
I'd like to call for sorry, does anyone have a question?
I was going to add, this is a family-owned hydro project, which is one of the reasons that we don't get more background information. But it's been in place for 150 years. And when we were looking at the pricing, we've asked for multiple scenarios so that we can match the price to the availability of aspects of the project like RECs. So there is, in the first 2 years, a lower front-end cost because there will not be the RECs with the associated value of a Class 1. Once the FERC licensing is in place and they have a Class 1 rating, we will be paying a Class 1 price for it. And the ability in the latter part of the contract to go back and revisit where the RECs pricing is as a fairness and equity issue to both sides, because we're not expecting the RECs market to remain constant over the 25-year period.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to call for a roll call vote on this, please. Mr. Stempak,
Hennessy,
aye.
aye.
Mr. Pacino, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Mr. Calderay.
Great, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Can we move on to the engineering and operations report? Hamid?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the study that was done in 2020 called the study called Solar and BES Capacity Study to find out the limitations on the system and the feeders in order to make sure we're not exceeding those limitations. In the interest of time, I'm going to move quickly on these. So the first slide is going to show you the reliability indices. Again, as you could see in the far upper right bar, you see that in every chart that we're well below the regional and national averages. The reliability is great. We continue to do great. The next slide is showing basically the causes of the outages, the average 5 years to month for the month of February. And the only area that we exceeded is, as you could see, the weather incidents and this number of storms. Everything else is well below the average of 5 years. The study, solar battery study, it includes the GIS map. We're talking about the GIS map of the solar installations, the solar installation system impact study, what were the goals and deliverables of the study, what are the concerns and the study results, as well as the remediation plans when you reach the system limitations, and also the RMLD operating procedure when it comes to applying for the solar or battery storage that the people they want to install. This shows basically the solar installation GIS map that we're tracking. Everybody who's requesting a interconnection with the RMLD system, we put them on the map. We monitor these. As you could see, we approximately have in our service territory about 90 installations, and they keep building up. So for this reason, because we saw so many, we expect increasing solar installations and battery storages. So that's why we did this study to find out what are the limitations on overall systems and also the feeders. So the goals were, like what I said, to find out what are the operating limits so it won't impact the reliability and the safety. We wanted to calculate the maximum capacity that we can offer to the customers for interconnection at every node. We wanted to integrate that data into our GIS mapping for better tracking and having a better control over the capacity limits. Those the system deliverables were after we did the engineering analysis was the written report and the data file that contained the GIS data that it would be up to date. We did it in two parts. Basically, we did the system modeling internally in order to to minimize the cost of the study. These type of studies generally cost anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000, and we did it under $20,000 because we did the preliminary study and preliminary system analysis, as well as the system modeling that was done internally by engineers. And then we gave that to the engineering firm that they have more advanced softwares in order to be able to do that detailed analysis, so we can use that and share the data. So What are these studies? What were the factors of what are the factors that included in the study? I'm not going to go over all of these, but you see on the left, these are the parameters that basically were included into the study, and they were examined to make sure we stay within the limits. What are the concerns? The concerns that we had was over voltage during the light load conditions, the reverse power flow, back to the RMLD feeders when the system is reaching the maximum limit or its capacity, how to handle that, the harmonic distortions, which is impacting the power qualities, and as well as the voltage transients or disturbance anytime the inverters, they're kicking these units in. So you see that the study was done and they gave us the results, and what they produced the heat index map that you see in the upper left corner. So at every color, they designates that, what is the limit, what is the maximum capacity at every section of the feeder. And overall, the overall system, they gave us the GIS map with every feeder looked like this heat index to give us the limitations at every point in our system. That indicates the available capacity, and this system is being updated every 6 months. It costs us minimum, engineering money, basically, to just transfer the data to the engineering firm PSE, and they're going to update it, and they're going to give us in the GIS format, so our system is updated up to date. So it's going to be located on the RMLD SharePoint. So engineers, everybody internally, they have access to that. So they know at every given point and every given time what are the limitations. And the engineering report will include the heat index map to show everybody that, where are we with that, the latest and greatest. This slide is showing some of the study results. Basically, on the left, you see the node at every point in the system, the network ID, which feeder it belongs to, and what is the maximum kW that could go at every given point. And the rest of these are basically the system parameters that were set in order to make sure that we are not exceeding the limits. Now, what are the limits? The limits are basically the amount of current that you can send back on the feeders, on the piece of wire, or maybe the fuse or upstream protective devices. So every one of those pieces or equipments, they have limitations. So you don't want to burn the wires. You don't want the overcurrent protective devices to operate unintentionally. So for those reasons, we did this study just to make sure we have everything under control and we're not exceeding those limits. So the system limitations, the capacity limitations basically are the shared responsibility, cooperation, collaboration between RMLD and customers. The customers, they shall include in their design, whoever who's going to be the design system and installer. We strongly recommend them to go to the smart inverters that they can control the power flow, reverse power flow, and also regulate the voltage. This technology is kind of new. What they do, the more and more companies, they're offering these advanced features that the inverters, they could be programmed either by the customer or the technicians, or they could be also controlled where the customers that choose to by the utility. So in order to participate into the DER, in the demand response DER program that is going to be offered in the future by IRD. So overall, the intent is to protect the system, and also in the interest of the reliability and safety, make sure we are not exceeding the system limitations. So the question becomes, what if a feeder has reached its maximum capacity? Well, basically, RMLD cannot take it. What the people they're going to be doing once we receive the request and engineering analysis is done, we're going to give report to the customer service, which is going to be contacted. The customers are going to be contacted, and they're going to be told that, well, the system has reached its maximum limit. So you're going to have to set your smart inverter basically to 0 outflow. So we can't take that. Now, at that point, what are the options? What the customers they're going to do? Well, there are two things that the customers they could do. They could install batteries like, Tesla, to store the energy during the day and use it at night, or they could participate in the peak shaving or demand response program that is going to be offered by RMLD in the future programs. We continuously following the industry best practices to offer these programs, incentives And, and one of these things is going to be participation into the demand response program being offered. Our SCADA system is fully capable of handling those type of actions or those type of operating processes and procedures. In order to do that, again, the customers are totally in control of that. If you choose not to participate, you just don't. If you do, then we can control the generation as the system needs through the SCADA system and bring the generators on off when the system needs it without exceeding the limitations and causing system trouble for the rest of the customers. Business processes. What's the process? The customer should contact the RMLD customer service. Once they contact by the phone or the email or letter, the customer service is going to issue a UAN number for the customers. The customers, they're going to be, once the customer service is issuing the UAN, that they're going to pass the work order to IRD and engineering operational assistants, and also Assistant Director of Engineering, John McDonough. And John is going to assign an engineer to that to perform engineering analysis. During that process, if the interconnection goes over 150 kW, we require a more detailed system impact study that's going to have to be formed out because the firms outside firms, they have some more sophisticated system and software in order to do those analyses than us. So that's going to be farmed out. If it's going to be less than 150 kW, internally we're going to do the analysis, and we're going to tell the customers that by the report and also the GIS map, that's going to tell them what are the system limitations and restrictions. Once that report goes to IRD and the customer service is going to contact the customer how to proceed with the installations. And then the customers, they're going to go ahead and hire installer. Once they install the system and the contractor is going to install it, obviously they're going to have to go through the respective town wire inspectors in order to get a permit. And the wire inspector, after inspection, they're going to call RMLD's control center and they're going to say that, okay, the customer is also to be energized, and that way, we're going to install the meter for their generation system. And then once we energize that, then we're going to update the GIS system. So that's our process and procedure. This basically is the flow chart of that system that tells, everybody and all the engineers and control authorities and the supervisors, they're all trained, as well as the IRD and the customer services, that this is the process flow that they're going to have to do from the time that the report, the time that the customer is making the call to the IRD, coming to engineering and operations, making the determinations whether it's going to have to be farmed out because it's over 150 or less than 150, and then the report goes back to the customer service and IRD. They contact the customer is going to install it, and then the wire inspector is going to inspect the service. If they give okay, that goes back to the engineer that this is good to go, and the engineer is going to issue the work order for the grid assets and communications group in order to energize the meter. At the same time, the engineer is going to be notifying the IRD for any applicable rebates that are available, and IRD is going to send that completion to, or the rebate to the business finance group, Wendy's group, and they're going to issue the rebate. And that's it. And then at that point, the work order is completed and engineering is going to update the GIS map right over here, and the process is complete. So everybody's trained for this process and procedure. So what are the important things to remember? Here it is. This is the shared responsibility between the customer and RMLD. So it's a collaboration between us and the customers. What the customers they should do, they should, as soon as they they decide to install a generator, the batteries or the solar, they need to contact RMLD immediately, so we can start that system capacity analysis and give them the report. So do not make any economic investment. Doesn't matter whether it's residential or commercial, industrial. So please contact RMLD so we can tell you what the system limitations are and what you can do and what are the options. We are there for you to assist you on that, and we're working with you. So what are the RMLD responsibilities? Making sure that we're utilizing the system capacity to the best we can. Along with those, if we can open up the capacity by making improvements like increasing the wire size or, upgrading the protection system like fuse and reclosers and relays at the station, whatever we can do without going through major expense that it's going to cost the ratepayers lots and lots of money. We will do whatever we can within reasonable means in order to, make sure the maximum capacity is being utilized. The same thing, also our other responsibility is to maintain the reliability of the system and also making sure the quality of the power is at its best. So we are continuously monitoring the best business practices to make sure we follow that trend. And the last thing is updating the DG capacity limitations by, updating the GIS and making sure everybody is aware of that and we're not exceeding those limits. And this is a transparent process. So we will be more than happy to sit down with the customer contractors or the customers to explain to them and show them exactly what the limitations are and why. So again, we're there to help you out to make sure this the interconnection is done to the best satisfaction of the customer and RMLD's system limitations. So the last slide, basically, we have this, as you know, this service manual handbook was completed in 2020 on the RMLD website. On the second row on the first icon, you're going to see that, on the right, you're going to see that service manual requirements. So for updates on the requirements and restrictions, everything, it's a section 13 on page 44, which is the customer title, that's customer owned generation requirements. We strongly recommend you, before you're making any investments, please contact us so we can, give you advice and tell you what the options are. And then that way, won't be disappointed if we're going to tell you that, well, you cannot generate anything back to our system and you're going to have to set your inverter to zero out. So that concludes my report. Thank you so much for the opportunity. If there is any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions.
Thank you very much, Hamid. Clearly a service that's needed and one that I think could be of real benefit to our customers.
Yes, absolutely.
If there's no questions, can we move on to the financial report? Wendy?
Good evening.
Hello.
Okay, there you go, Hamid. Sorry.
Sorry.
Hold on one second. I'm sharing. Okay, so. Okay. So I just want to go, as Colleen mentioned, I just want to go over the audit schedule. So typically it takes about 6 weeks to turn around the audit from the time that the auditors are in-house. And this year they will be, hopefully, if nothing changes in the next 2 weeks, they will be on site the first full week of April to perform the audit. And about 6 weeks turnaround to finalize, get some letters back from legal. And I would love to, have the audit presented to the audit committee in May. I think that's best case scenario. Worst case would be June. So as you know, it gets presented to the audit committee first, and then the audit committee makes a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners at that time. And then the Board of Commissioners accepts the audit. And after the Board of Commissioners accepts the audit, the final financial statements, then it can be released to the public. So that goes in line with Colleen's report to the select board and the towns. So tonight I'm just going to give you an unaudited draft of the financials as they look from my perspective before the any kind of pension and OPEB adjustments get made. So as I have been focusing pretty much all year due to COVID, is our ongoing relationship, I would say, with our customers, trying to, give them some leeway and extend any type of services that we can in order to help them, in order to help ourselves at the same time. So as you can see, we kind of dipped here in June, which was kind of the height of when everything people were having the effects of COVID. And then we stayed over here, and then we dipped again in October. And now we're right back where we want to be, pretty much 96.5%. 90 days current. The reason is because, we do not impose any finance charges or any penalties for late payments. Oftentimes these utility bills get missed. They need reminders. So 90 days is really a good judge. So basically 96.5% of cash is in the bank. That's what this says. So then I wanted to give you a look of the depreciation reserve as compared to capital spending. So on a positive note, I want to make it clear that our capital improvements are for the safety and the reliability of our infrastructure. So depreciation reserve is the only reserve that absolutely has to be held for capital projects. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that the RMLD's mission here is to continue to provide to our customers a safe and reliable system. And you can tell that by the capital spending that we continue to add. So we came in about 7.3 million in CY20. So it's below the budget that we had intended, but due to our restrictions and COVID impact, that's where we ended. And then operations and maintenance expenses. So you can see on the left column here, the actual expenses through 12/31, and then the budgeted expenses. We're about $1.1 million under budget. And the majority of that is due to COVID. So I can give you the highlights here. I've gone through the highlights a couple times, and now that we've put everything in the right months, at the end of the year, everything is in 2020 that belongs in 2020. We did struggle with that due to a lot of vendors, their corporations or their companies, not working from home, not working. So we're still getting some straggling invoices in, but not really material at this point. So vacancies in multiple areas due to talent pool retirees resignations, causing an overall decrease. This is where our biggest decrease in our budget stands. So you can see by the FERC, as you can follow when you look at the financial statements, which positions they belong in, and grid asset management, station technicians, material management, linemen, and a little bit of admin staff. COVID causing a decrease in spending, particularly in these two areas. Tree trimming programs, they were halted or decreased because of the state mandate, and education and training programs were either canceled or diminished, and some of them are not as effective. I get some background here, sorry. Some of them are not as effective online as they would be in person. So, and just so you know, I'm focusing here only on the significant discrepancies. There are some other discrepancies that are immaterial from my perspective. Then there are unforeseen events causing an increase in spending. So we talked about the sick buyback payouts. So because of the new language in the union contracts that we're allowing employees to buy back sick time as they go, strict guidelines for that. But if they meet those guidelines, they are encouraged to buy back the sick time now, because that eliminates the liability. That we're trying to reduce the liability on the books. Typically, year after year, the liability increases because payroll increases. This year, you'll see the liability has decreased. So this is really a positive for the RMLD. And then we also had to spend quite a bit of money on roof repairs. You've been in the building sometimes. You've seen the roof leaks. And then we had to spend money on the security monitoring measures for the IT infrastructure due to the ransomware intrusion. So that's where the significant discrepancies are. And that really concludes my report tonight.
Thank you, Wendy. Any questions from anyone?
Hi, John. It's
Yes,
Bob.
Bob, please.
I have a question. I know we just reviewed the sick policy, and if we have a sick buyback liability, we're working to make it better by encouraging the employees to take the money now rather than later. Is that something we should revisit in the sick policy to potentially limit that exposure in the future? Or I'm assuming that's in the union contracts, so that would become a negotiation. But
just so you know, in the past contract, Colleen worked very hard to minimize the sick time with the negotiation. So she was able to, through negotiation, get it down to 30 days. It used to be that we have quite a lot of employees have unlimited. And, you know, as people retire, we're getting out of that. But as people come in, they're limited to 30 days only. So it was, you know, it was unlimited, then it was 90 days, then it was 60 days. Now everybody's at 30 days, any new employees coming into the building. So what we're trying to do is offer people like with the unlimited, the opportunity to buy back time at the dollar salary that they make now versus adding on to this liability later. So because they have unlimited time, they have more flexibility to buy a lot more back than somebody has 30 days cap. The 30-day cap can buy 1 week a year, pretty much, until the 30 days is over and you can never buy back again.
Right, right. Can they offer it to other employees? There are incentives like offering it to other employees if they're sick or anything like that.
That's you know, extenuating circumstances for that's visited case by case in a situation that is absolutely necessary that the RMLD would offer that.
Okay.
As a
Thank you.
donation. It's considered a donated sick time. So it's, you know what I mean? In order, if somebody's, I'm just going to throw it out there. Let's just say somebody has cancer, God forbid, and they cannot work and they've ran out of all their time. This happens, right? This is life.
Yeah.
So we would extend that. The general manager has the ability to extend that to the company to say, would anybody like to donate time anonymously? This is anonymous donation. Would you like to donate time for this individual? So yes, that has happened in the past. It's far and few between, thankfully.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy.
Sure.
I think we've got a number of procurement requests. If perhaps we could get started, Phil, with the first one. For ice machines, maintenance, and repair, HVAC.
Like I said, I'm
Bill, you-
here. I think I'm here somewhere. Move to recommend that bid 2020-47 for HVAC and ice machines preventive maintenance and repair services be awarded to Ambient Temperature Corporation for $118,056 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 39M, as the lowest responsible and eligible bidder on the recommendation of General Manager. This is a 3-year contract.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hamid, did you want to comment on this?
Yes, sir. I'm going to explain to you exactly. We only had one responsive basically offer to this offer. The reason for that, we sent the bid to 25 companies and only one responded to this request, to the IFB. So the reason was some of them, they didn't have the DCAM certifications, and some they said that, you know, they can provide both services. And providing both services for the ice machines and also the HVAC system actually would save RMLD money. The last time that this contract went out, the same company, Ambient Temperature, bid it for $89,808. This time around, they came in higher at $118,056. And the reason for that was the COVID restrictions and the CDC requirements to change the air filters from 4 times to 6 times a year. And the type of the filters that they requested and they were mandated to replace are called MERV-13 filters. So that's due to the COVID. So that increase in the price was due to the restrictions that, you know, CDC required and increasing the replacement, you know.
Right. Thank you very much, Hamid.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, I'd like to have a roll call vote. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Mr. Single aye.
Skulter, aye.
Mr. Talbot, aye.
Thank you. Phil?
Move to recommend that IFP 2021-3 for ABB OVR-3 15 kV recloses be awarded to Stewart C. Irby Company for a total of $101,215 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 164, Section 56D, on the recommendation of General Manager.
Second.
Okay, discussion, please.
Okay, so this one we sent the bid to 14 vendors, and basically we got 2 responses back on this one on the same item. The lowest responsive bidder was Stuart Irby, which came out actually about a bit short, about $1,000 less than 1150, less than the second bidder, which was Wesco. So Stuart Irby is going to get this. This is the ones that was budgeted for $100,000 for 5 units, and we came a little bit over 100,000, 101,215. So it's $1,215 over the budgeted
Great.
amount.
Thank you, Hamid.
You're welcome, sir.
Could I have a roll call vote, please? Mr. Stempak, aye.
Zeno, aye.
Hennessy, aye.
Skolter, aye.
Thank you.
All right, next one.
Phil?
That IFP 2021-19 for pole mounted transformers be awarded to Wesco Distribution, Inc. for $120,074 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 56D, on the recommendation of General Manager.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yes, these are basically, as you recall, in the budget that was approved, we put all the transformers for the system reliability and also for maintenance, everything in one bucket for both overhead and underground applications. So this is the overhead portion. The bid was sent to 18 vendors, and we got response from 4. We did a detailed analysis on that, and then the lowest responsible and responsive bidder was the Wesco Distribution for $120,074.
Thank you. There's no more discussion. Roll call vote, please. Mr.
Hennessy, aye.
Stempak, aye.
Mr. Pacino, aye.
Skolter, aye.
Skolter?
Talbot, aye.
Thank you.
Move that IFP 2021-10 for pad mounted transformers be awarded to Wesco Distribution for $194,274 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 56D, on the recommendation of General Manager.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, these are 14 transformers, again, going back to underground for projects related that we use them for projects. We sent a bid to 21 bidders, and we got the response from 5, 6 of them. And the lowest responsible and responsive bidder was Wesco Distribution for $194,274.
Thank you.
You
Have a roll call vote, please. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Hennessy, aye.
Pacino, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Mr. Skolter, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Scheduling for the next meeting, we've got down for Thursday, April 22nd. Is that okay with everyone?
That's fine
Except for
with
Mr. Hennessy?
It's fine with me, John.
Okay, great. I think we need coverage at the next CAB meeting as well, because Mr. Hennessy was supposed to be there, but he found something else to do.
I can cover
Is
that.
anybody offering to cover?
I can cover that.
Thank you, Phil.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to move on to the next item, which is the review of the general manager. And so this is usually a discussion type of item. And you've received a lot of material, but Phil, could you read the motion, please?
But do we have numbers? The motion I have has no numbers in it.
Oh, we had X and Y. Okay, we could have the discussion first and then put
We
those
need to
into
have
the motion.
discussion first before we.
Okay, that'd be fine. Colleen has sent out quite a bit of material. I hope all of you have had a chance to review it. This has been a particularly difficult year for everyone, as we all know. 2020 was a disaster in so many respects, but the RMLD stayed the course. And that was, in my mind, directly attributable to the leadership role that Colleen has played in the organization. So there have been a huge number of sort of items that have happened over the year, which if you walk through all of them, it's pretty impressive. We've also, as you recall, changed our format for doing reviews of the general manager from a point system to a sort of a 360 roundabout discussion with the general manager. And we did the last one in July, and now we're quite late in terms of having done the next one, and this payment, raise, et cetera, would be retroactive back to January 1st. So I don't know why it happens, but it seems like every year we're months behind giving anything to the general manager, which is very strange in my eyes, but it happens. And I'm certainly responsible, as we all are, but COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench into everything. Perhaps it would be helpful, Colleen, for you just to talk through the things that we talked about in the review session in terms of the key items that were we had decided in July, if you have that in front of you.
Yes. So yeah, as John said, I sent out goal narratives, lists of accomplishments. Commissioner Hennessy and O'Rourke, being HR executive professionals, did a presentation on moving from a point system to quarterly check-in. We managed to do one, but as I said in my letter, because of COVID, I met on a weekly basis and gave updates to the chair and sent memos out as a mechanism of staying quite transparent. And as you can see from just the meeting we just had, I think we do an outstanding job of providing a lot of detail, and we appreciate, everyone keeping up with all the technicalities of all of us engineers, and we give some quite impressive updates every month. So the goals that we had discussed included the Wilmington substation, the Ash Street campus, solar battery system impact study, master cell agreement, and electrification workshop. So just speaking a little bit on the Wilmington substation, I know we've discussed some of that. We kind of went from working with National Grid, and that was an issue on the assessment assessor's map. And then we took a different course to work with Article 97 with the town and a private entity to purchase some land to do an Article 97 swap. That was quite a bit of work to try to get that, all the logistics of that down. But at the last minute, we had everything lined up. We had lobbying, we had the letter of intents, we had the legislative language, everything was ready to go. Board of Selectmen, we had some issues with the private seller who was going to make that swap, and they made some contingencies in there that did not fit into our time plan, nor was it under the authority of the RMLD to grant such contingencies. So we've switched gears again. We were also in parallel looking at another couple of lots, and we're back on that. And we actually have another meeting next week, and we're hoping that that's going to come to fruition. So that's kind of the update on the Wilmington substation. We worked on it pretty much round the clock for the entire year, but it's very difficult with land in a particular area, load. Even the town of Wilmington put an article in the paper. We've put articles in the paper reaching out to hopefully someone will come forward. But we think this lot we're working on now will pan out. The Ash Street campus evaluation in July, we kind of put that on hold because of COVID to evaluate not necessarily moving out of this building, but what are our options? Because as we had learned over the last 5-6 years, the town of Reading was looking at economic development. And so where we stand with that now is we did not do a study for this building, but the town has started what's called a bid committee for business development. The RMLD is part of that. I will be probably making somewhat of a presentation on that at the next meeting because we have to have some kind of a commitment to the town of Reading on that. And because this kind of had to do with my goal, I want to make sure that the board completely understands this bid process and how we would be involved and what kind of commitment we would need to have monetarily and what that would mean for our customers and how that ties into even us evaluating staying in this location. So we can talk about that next month, but that one was put on hold. The solar battery system impact study, Hamid did a great presentation. That's been done for a while. But again, we've been queued up. So thank you, Hamid, for that great presentation. I will reiterate that, you know, the service requirements handbook that's on the website will be updated with more information. And Hamid is spot on. Please call us before you install one so we can make sure that our system stays reliable and everyone stays safe. The master cell attachment agreement, due to the FCC order, we worked extensively on that throughout the year and we completed that. We really haven't had any requests. We had a couple from AT&T and then they got dropped. But we expect that that will come, you know, as autonomous vehicles come in, more things will be drawn towards 5G. So we're in place. The aesthetic policies, you know, I've sent out information to all of the towns, worked with the cabs. So, you know, we're set when someone asks us to attach. And you got to remember, there's still information about the FCC actually applying to MLPs. Now, we talked about that at the beginning, but the way that I've set up this master agreement and all the technical specs is because we really want to work with each of the town to minimize double polls, to minimize more polls. So we have to understand that, you know, we could argue that the FCC, we could argue that these things should go on our polls, but we want to minimize polls, you know, for a lot of reasons. And we made that commitment to the towns at the beginning. So just kind of a history on that. But those master agreements are done. I sent everyone copies of them. I sent you copies of all the technical specifications. The electrification workshop, we talked about the heat pump coming up. Some of those in the EV workshop got queued up. We're ready for the formats. But we did run a number of videos and webinars throughout the year virtually that all spoke to electrification. They all went over all of our rebates and our movement to electrification. So we did do a lot. It didn't specifically state that we're talking about the EV or the heat pump, but those were queued up and the heat pump's done. EV will be April, what did I say, April 27th. So I think we had a great year for everything that we've gotten done. I think, as John said earlier, if you take a look at that artwork from the children, if you had a chance to look at my cover letter that will go in the front of the annual report, I think we were extremely resilient. Our system is resilient. Our employees have been resilient. Your GM has been resilient, and you have been resilient as a board. And it's all appreciated. And thank you to all of the staff. Because their accomplishments and my accomplishments come together along with the board's support of our projects, our capital and expense budgets, and the CAB as well. I think given the circumstances, I want to say it was a successful year, and I think Wendy will say that the audit will be successful as well. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Colleen. Would any of the other commissioners like to comment before I make a recommendation?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to say that, you know, based on everything, Colleen, that you and your team had to go up against during this pandemic year, I think you accomplished all of the key goals with the things that were in your control. You know, there are so many things that you can't control, like the land in Wilmington and things like that. And I know there's so many stakeholders that you have to, you know, you have union employees, non-union employees, you got commercial, residential. There's so many people and stakeholders that have to have set demands on you, and you did it with, like you said, resiliency during a very tough year. So congratulations. And you do it in a male-dominated industry, and I don't think I wanted to just say that I think there's challenges that you face that others wouldn't. So I think it's an impressive year.
Oh, thank you. I think we have spent a lot of time, and as I said, we have had a meeting every day at 10 a.m. since COVID started, since the end of February. And we are really good at emergency response. But I don't think anybody here was good at a pandemic. This was very new for us. And, you know, material, inventory count, making sure that everyone stayed healthy and that we kept business continuity going was pretty amazing. But I'm not going to say that it wasn't really, really scary at sometimes, because I already have the responsibility of ensuring that everyone is safe that works here, the public is safe. But when you're thinking about, you know, your own family and your employees for viruses and people getting sick, and it really is a huge responsibility. And I thank my senior management team for being there in every staff meeting to help us get through that, because it's a precedent that we've never had, and there's no emergency that an electric company has ever gone through that's like a pandemic. And kudos to the towns and the Board of Healths and everyone else that's gone through this challenge.
Any comments from any other commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So one thing about the process, I mean, I did get all the emails yesterday, which were emails from Colleen with her achievements and letter, and then some salary comparisons, but none of that's in the board book, right? I don't think so. So shouldn't that material be in the board book? I mean, just as a matter of process and openness and all that.
Well, I think we can, I don't think there's any issue with including it in, when we do the posting, Dave.
Yeah, okay.
We could certainly post it. That's not an issue.
Yeah, the goal narratives, none of that. I mean, we can put it all in the board book, but we will not be putting in the board book like memes, salary, survey, things
Right.
that are not
Yeah,
shared.
no, right, understood.
Right. But
although-
most of the stuff that you're going to see shows up in the annual report anyways, but sure.
I'm just saying,
I
going
think it's
into
a good thing. Yeah.
going into a public meeting, the documents that the board is deliberating over that are not protected by executive session, I think should be available to the public, and that the mechanism is through the board book. So just as kind of a point that I think we should have happened. It was a lot of information to get yesterday and try to process, and my own reactions just on the substance of it is I do thank you for your hard work and all the great engineering that's done at RMLD. I echo the comments of Dave about COVID and the excellent way it's all been handled. I do think it's worth acknowledging. We had a discussion earlier about policy 19, which gives us a clear role, and that there's not something else that says there's not a role there. And I do think there was a significant decision made that ended up moving towards a reversal in the last 6 months. I think we all know what this is about, the biomass, not to go back over it, but I mean, it happened. And I just wonder what's your own assessment of that, Colleen, as you look back at the decision you made and what's happened in the last 6 months, what are your own reflections on that? Because that didn't show up in any of those documents either. There was no discussion of it of any kind.
Well, I didn't discuss it because I figured we spent the last 6 months discussing it. So, and I didn't want to put it in there and have it be a debate. I made myself perfectly clear at the beginning that I was following the policy. We had been focused on obtaining renewables on a pretty good clip in order to make the percentage goals that were in the policy. We had added a number of renewable projects and presented them every month. When the Palmer was purchased, it was presented in November. It was not discovered in November. It was presented. You can go back and watch the RCTV. I think we've learned a lot about environmental justice. I think that that's something that I'm very interested to see for new projects coming out when I present them, how the board is going to handle that, because while Greg and Chuck can discuss this gravity hydro and that it's been there for a long time, when we have new projects, it is going to be interesting. And I'm not going to be able to present and say, there is an issue, there isn't an issue. That's going to be up to the board, because a lot of these projects in the future are going to be newly built. So that will be a challenge for all of us to work together to make that crystal ball decision. I mean, I am a proponent of biomass. I understand everyone's concerns. And when I was asked to provide options, I provided options. That would be keep, breach, or sign. And I did it quickly. So, I mean, that's my take on that. We had a process of purchasing renewables that were different from system energy that was being done once a year. And yeah, I guess we took some liberties to not be following the policy down literally, and we've made that change. That's why I said a couple of meetings ago that we would bring everything to the board. That's why policy 30 reflects that. I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, I said the last 6 months, that's the training we went through.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not really sure what else to say.
Yeah, Colleen, I don't think you need to say anything else. It's, as Mr. Hennessy reminded me, when you're being evaluated, that the goalpost is right there, and then all of a sudden changes the goalpost to over here in the middle of the game, it's very, very difficult to react. But I think we've beaten this up quite a bit. I would like to move to a recommendation
Mr.
for.
Chair, can I might say?
Oh, yes,
please?
Phil, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
I know Mr. Coulter is after me, maybe. I echo many of the same things that the two Daves have said. One of the things a little bit in the distant past, but I think your handling of the IT situation and the way you get that straightened out, of the personnel issues that went along with that. I think that's a compliment. I wanted to make a point, and thank you for that, and for all your services, as the other two Daves have talked about.
My pleasure.
Mr. Coulter?
Yeah, I have a unique perspective of coming from the industry that we're talking about. And when I see the RMLD model, I came in very neutral and blind to what went on, and I have been extremely impressed by Colleen and the staff and all the employees at Reading Light. Again, it's a small group, a tight-knit group, and I'm very, very impressed with that organization to date, with what gets accomplished, with the budget that you have and the personnel that you have. Been a pleasure, and I hope it continues with and everything keeps rolling the way it does, right? You guys find an obstacle, you get through it, and you meet the challenges every day, and kudos to yourself and all the staff at Reading Light. Thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
I tag along, John, on
Yeah,
something
please go ahead,
Bob just
Dave.
said?
Absolutely.
Bob mentioned the staff, and I think, Colleen, you have hired everybody that's on this Zoom, or developed them for sure. And that's kudos to you, because like Bob, I'm really impressed with every function, the leader of each function that sits here in this meeting today. And that's a lot of the credit goes to you, because you brought them here and developed them.
Thank you. We're building a good team. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest, if it's all right, to throw in some numbers here for the motion. I'd like to propose a 4% salary increase and a $6,000 bonus. Open that to discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just going back to your, you had sent a comparison around by email to the board, noting where Reading Light stands in terms of GM salary. Do you want to just address that briefly?
Sure, I'd be happy to. There are a number of what Mr. Talbot's referring to is some data produced by the mean survey, which covers a number of the all the municipals actually in terms of salary versus sort of the revenue of the municipal. And typically, the larger the organization you're in, the higher the salary. Just kind of goes hand in hand, because there's so much more management that's assumed to be done, and so much more higher level of sophistication. And the way that I read the data that I had sent around to everyone was that there are a number of municipals who are significantly smaller than the RMLD, but who are paying their general managers more than we are. There's one that's paying more, which is the largest one, which is Taunton. And then there's a number, 4, 5, 6, that are sort of right on the line, just slightly below what we're paying our general manager. So my sense is, and those are 2020 numbers, by the way. So in the meantime, these others have gotten bumps up in over this past year. So that's why I'm leveraging in a 4% increase and a $6,000 bonus, or at least suggesting that. I believe the union increase this year is 3%. Is that correct? And so, you know, a 1 percentage point on top of what the union is getting, I think, is quite frankly too little, but that's my own opinion. Yes,
John?
Mr. Hennessy?
Do you or Colleen know what we've done for increases for the GM over the last couple of years? Do you have
Yes.
that? Just in
Yes,
I
in 2019, it was 4%. 2018, it was 4.5%. 17 was 4.5%. 16 was 6%. 15 was 3.6%. 14 was 3%. Her starting salary was 165. In other words, she was starting at a significantly lower salary in those days because, well, she was just hired, and we were bringing in a new person, had to prove that this person could handle the load and do whatever was needed. And I think Colleen has done that.
Is it worth pulling up the slide of the comparison slide, John? I think comparisons are very helpful. I mean,
No, that's part of mean data, Dave, and I'm not going to share that.
Okay, so if I may, just my reaction to the comparison is that I believe the numbers showed we have 41 light plants. There's 4 who make more than Colleen. 3 of them, I believe, is Taunton, Holyoke, and Braintree that make a little more, and they also run a second business, a broadband business, in addition to electric utility. So there is another vertical that the manager is doing. So I think may only be one in the state that's higher than Colleen makes, which is $212,000. Plus we provide Colleen with $800 a month for her vehicle. So I guess at some point, it's not really as much about performance or ratings as what is the market bear, what's our obligation to the ratepayer. And I feel like we're kind of at a very high salary now, and we have to think of it from the other perspective of just, well, what's the top of the market, and why would we want to go and be the most highest paid in the state? So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all. And that I just wanted the perspective is that I think we're already at the second highest for an electric utility that's not also running a broadband business in the state of Massachusetts. And when we protect the ratepayer, we look at costs and we look down the road at, all right, if there's a future moment you have to hire a general manager, it sets this bar so much higher. And that I don't see the market justification for keeping going so much higher than.
Well, let me respond to some of that. Then in the first place, it wouldn't be the highest paid. It would still be Taunton that would be the highest paid.
Right, that's a broadband.
Holyoke and Hudson are going through their process, even as we are, actually probably 6 months ago, because we're late to the game. They are significantly higher than the numbers that are shown on what I sent out here. So again, it's not a question of is it too much? The question is, what do you need to have in place to have a sophisticated professional management team that's built over the last 7 years that keeps us in basically the top #1 tier for reliability and for inexpensive power in the state of Massachusetts. I mean, if you try to I'll be very blunt. You'd go out and try to replace someone at this time. It'll be almost very, very difficult. You're going to have to match easily, and you're going to have to give a significant bonus to bring someone new in. And I hate saying this in front of Colleen, but that's just the fact of the matter. Whenever you're hiring someone away from another place, it's a significant bump. And so I think we're being pretty wise and pound foolish.
I don't think there's any evidence for what you just said, but
there's total evidence in what I've just said. I can show you study after study, as can Mr. Hennessy, can do exactly the same thing. And as a matter of fact, if they'd like to comment on that, that's fine.
The MLP
I'd like to move this forward to a vote, please. Phil, could you please read the motion with those numbers in it?
Is Dave set with what he wants to say?
I think he did.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd cede to Dave.
we haven't heard from
You wanted
Bob
to
and
add something,
Phil
that's
about
okay.
the number. Do you guys feel comfortable with the number too?
I'm comfortable with the percentage of the raise, and if anything, in the course of a year that we've had, two important things I think is the rate and the reliability. In those two, almost the criteria that we base everything on. And if we can keep the rates low and reliability is significantly lower than anybody, then the general manager's accomplished the goal that we wanted that person to do. And if the revenue and stream is good, which it is, that's another positive that we have. Now, if we can go back and share that success with the employees that made that happen, then I think that's important to recognize that. That's my take on that. I think 4% is you're in this industry, 4% is a good raise. You're happy with that. I think even on the bonus side, I think maybe even a little bit higher bonus, I'd be happy. I'd be more than willing to make that increase.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with both numbers because I think it's very consistent with what raises we've given Colleen in the general manager position over the last, since I've been around. It's kind of right in the mid-range, and this has been an extremely difficult year, and I think she's met the challenge for this year. So I'm fine with the numbers the way they are.
Phil, would you like to comment?
Yeah. Well, after hearing what Bob has to say, now I'm very comfortable with the numbers. Bob has kind of brought us a perspective that I don't have. You want to talk about accounting salaries, I'll talk about accounting salaries, but I don't have, I have no comparison other than the chart, which I have up on the other screen right now, as to what I've got. So based upon Bob's comments, I'm not comfortable with the numbers at this point. So.
Okay, could I ask for a rereading of the motion then with those numbers?
Very good. Move that the Board of Commissioners approve a 4% salary raise and a $6,000 bonus retroactive to January 1st, 2021, and to be paid as Ms. O'Brien chooses, as ICMA, cash, or a combination of the two.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call vote, please? Mr. Stenbeck, aye.
Ms.
Do we
Pacino,
do any
aye?
discussion at this point, or we're already voting? Okay.
We already had a huge discussion.
Well, I would propose that it's a 2% raise with with a small bonus. I think this is too much. It's the highest. It's going to soon be the highest salary in the state, and I don't see the justification for it. But go ahead and do what you got to do.
I'd like to have a roll call vote, please, on the motion that Mr. Pacino has read. Mr. Stenbeck, aye.
Ms. Pacino, aye.
Hennessy, aye. Bob, your speaker's off.
Muted.
Mr. Talbot?
Talbot, no.
Okay, thank you very much. That be shown the motion passed. Okay. I'd like to move on to the next motion. Sort of reorganization of the RMLD Board of Commissioners. And Phil, would you like to read the motion, please?
Excuse me, I just have a point of order here.
Yep.
I don't think we've ever done a reorganization at this point in the cycle. And Phil, could you address whether the appropriateness of doing a reorganization at this point in the calendar year?
Absolutely. It's very close to when we usually do it anyway.
We do it after the election. You do it after when you have a new board.
I'm sorry, but I've decided that I would like to do the reorganization now, and I have the ability to be able to make that choice. I'm always striving to find a better process, Mr. Talbot, and trying to improve our processes and how we work. And I think that we need to have people on the board in a role that have had experience and have worked with the board for some period of time. And I think it's very appropriate to do that. And if next month or the month after you wish to have another motion to change or reorganize the board, you can certainly propose that. We can do this at any time. There is no time that we can't do it. Yes, Mr.
Sure.
Hennessy, please.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I've been 6 years. Every time I think we did it after the election when you have, because we could have 40% of the board not even here. It's certainly not me. It seems like to pick leaders for a board that one or two of the members aren't even going to be here, it seems premature. Phil, can I ask Phil, have we ever done this in the past before an election?
Have we ever done it? No, we have not. We have not. Not that I can remember at any one point in time. No.
Yes, Bob.
Man, I came in last year and I voted the chair. Clueless, absolutely clueless. Yeah, I totally agree with the statement that I've been here a year, at least I have an understanding of what's going on. I walked in on the day one and I voted for what? I have no idea, right? So I think prior to, it helps, gives you perspective. I think, asking somebody new to vote, it's just, you have no basis on anything. So I think this is a better process.
It really does provide continuity. And I think, again, all of our processes, like we look at any one of our policies, we review them and we try to change them for the better. I think this is for the better.
If I may, Mr. Chair, you've just heard from Phil, you're breaking a norm of 30x years of a board chooses its officers of the board that's constituted, not 2 weeks before the board might be different. It's highly irregular. It's disenfranchising at least one future board member. I certainly have the only way this could go tonight is Bob and Phil, and I certainly have no issue down the road of next month of them being officers, but this is just not the time to choose officers. You choose officers when you have a new board, as we've done for 30x years. It's just.
I'm sorry, Mr. Talbot, but I disagree with you. And I have the motion here, and I would like to ask for a reading of the motion.
Has anybody seconded it?
I've not read.
We haven't read the motion yet.
I have not read the motion yet. I'd like to ask Dave Hennessy, I mean, what's your feeling? Do you think you should vote to now at this point or not? Dave?
I don't. I don't think I should be voting for a board leadership that I'm not part of. I don't think it's right to do it now. I agree with you. I agree with your history and what Dave Talbot's saying right now. It just seems a little bit out of order for us.
Well, it's very possible that you're going to have people on the board next month who, as Mr. Coulter said, have no idea what they're doing, have no idea who to vote for or why they would be voting for them, and have no history. And it just seems awkward to me. So just because I'll get to you in just a minute, Dave. It seems awkward to me that when you've got a process which doesn't make any sense, even though you haven't done it for 30 years, doesn't mean you should re-examine it and maybe do something for the better. I think this is for the better. Mr. Hennessy, you had something to say?
Well, Bob gave the point that he didn't really know, maybe he hadn't watched any of the board meetings before joining the board, but there might be somebody that's running for election that's paying close attention to what we've been doing over the last couple of years and might have some important things to say and with the discussion about who should be leader. And I don't know, it just seems, I just disagree with doing it now.
Just
Mr. Bob, please.
Again, it's circular conversation, right? But just the benefit of meeting people, understanding the board process. You're right, Dave. Having there's knowledge of everybody coming in here. You don't walk into RMLD blind, but you are absolutely blind to the process when you come here. That is very, very true. Just like any job, anywhere that you go to, there's a culture, there's a process. You need to absorb that. I've had the ability now to be here for a year. I think to ask somebody literally on day one to vote for leadership, that is such an extremely difficult process or ask of anybody. I think you have the knowledge of being here for years, so you can impart that before you go, and making a judgment before you go versus somebody coming in and just being very difficult for them. Thank you again. Personal point of view, right? Thank you.
Mr. Pacino, would you read the motion, please?
Let me just say, I'm feeling like I'm the swing vote here. I'm feeling like Judge Roberts, for crying out loud. I see 2 for and 2 against.
You are the middle square.
You are.
I'm uncomfortable with this, Mr. Chair, with the fact that we're split. I'm going to say that we do not make this motion. I'm sorry to say that. I do think it was a good idea to do this because who knows, we're not scheduled to meet until April the 22nd. There could be no chair between the time of the election, April 4th and to the 22nd at that point. So But I'm uncomfortable with the fact that we're too split on this. We don't have enough consensus. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, at this point.
So I certainly understand. Yes, Mr. Coulter, please.
Maybe we wait 6 months, let that new member become comfortable with the board and extend the chair for a few months and maybe modify the vote to allow the new member
You could do that.
to at least gain some experience of a few meetings and then make a choice.
Yeah, there's a possibility we could do that and just have a sunset on the chair, make it a 3-month term. If that's agreeable to everybody at this
Then
point.
that would be the new date that you would elect.
Yeah,
A new chair.
that would seem to be reasonable to me too. I mean, I am trying to, again, I'll reiterate it. I am trying to change a process for the better, but I agree with Bob. Having, even when I came in, I didn't know anybody or anything or any of the financials or how the place was managed. And we had to really turn the entire organization around, and we're starting, with not a whole lot. So we really need, my feeling is, you need leadership. You need someone who's been there, done that, and some kind of continuity. It's basically about continuity to be able to carry it over. And having someone totally new, or asking someone, as Mr. Coulter says, to vote for someone and not even know what their capabilities are, just seems very, very strange to me. I just don't think it's the right thing to do.
It's how elected boards operate. They choose their officers when there's a new board, and then they choose their officers. It's how it works.
Well, not every board is that way, Mr. Talbot. Maybe you think so, but it's not true. You've got certain opinions, which are, I'm sure, valid in many different areas. That's not necessarily true here. But given what Mr. Pacino has just mentioned, I think that going for something like a 3-month, hiatus before an election of a new chair is fine with me.
I don't see why that's different than what you're already proposing.
I'm proposing that we either have an election now, or we have it in 3 months.
Well, I think your new board, you could have this discussion next
Right.
April. You could decide together when you want to vote for new leadership.
Just
I think
like every
that's-
year.
Yeah. So if there's a timing change, you should probably decide that. Your new board should decide that together.
Okay, I guess we will forego the motions then, since Mr. Pacino does not feel comfortable with it. And that's the end of the session for tonight. For this, I'd like to move into executive session. Would you read that, Phil?
Yeah, move that the Board of Commissioners go in executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 164, Section 47D, exemption from public records and open meeting requirements in certain instances, to discuss competitively sensitive issues regarding options for power supply, and to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and return to regular session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
Could I have a second, please?
Second,
A roll call vote. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Ms. Hennessy, aye.
Mr.
Talbot, aye.
Pacino, aye.
Mr. Coulter, aye.
Okay, great. We'll see you all in executive session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We need to get him on board. Close out.